Assalamualaikum and greetings everyone. My name is Nurhasya Adibah Radzman. I'm from the International Islamic University Malaysia. I'll be presenting the paper entitled Determinants of Food Production in Southeast Asia Countries. The main author of this paper is Professor Dwaza, who is from the same institution as me. There are 4 parts to this presentation. The first is introduction, followed by data and methodology, findings and discussion, and finally, conclusion. Now I begin with the first part, introduction. Food security is a highly prioritized goal which is listed in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as goal number 2 that sets a target to end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. The latest report by the Food and Agriculture Organization (FAO) on the state of food security and nutrition in the world showed worsening food security situation where both hunger and food insecurity are on the rise. The ASEAN Food and Nutrition Security Report 2021 also reported the prevalence of moderate or severe food insecurity in majority of the lower middle income countries in Southeast Asia. The situation even persists in Singapore, which has a high income status as shown in Figure 1. Thus, in order to attain the desired food security goal, this calls for increasing the supply of nutritious foods as well as bridging productivity gaps in the production of such foods. The objective of this study is therefore to analyze the determinants of food production in 9 selected countries in Southeast Asia. The determinants of food production analyzed in this study are based on the findings of previous studies. These determinants are categorized into 3, which are agricultural determinants, consisting of land and labor, macroeconomic determinants, comprising of capital, foreign direct investment (FDI), gross domestic product (GDP), and consumer price index (CPI), as well as environmental determinant, namely carbon dioxide or CO2 emission. Now I move on to the second part, which is on data and methodology. The data used in the study is panel data of 9 developing and least developed countries in Southeast Asia spanning from 2006 to 2016. Most of the data used are sourced from World Bank, except for employment in agriculture, which is sourced from Department of Statistics International Labour Organization (ILO). In terms of method, the study firstly adopts 3 methods of panel regression, which are common effects of pooled OLS, fixed effects, and random effects. Panel data models examine group individual specific effects, time effects, or both in order to deal with heterogeneity or individual effect that may or may not be observed. These effects are either fixed or random effects. A fixed effects model examines if intercepts vary across group or time period, whereas a random effects model explores differences in error variance components across individual or time period. Next, the interaction term is included in the panel model. The interaction term is a term where 2 variables are multiplied to be a product term. The interaction term is used to get robustness of the regression and avoid specification error with the advantage of avoiding conditional monotone of relationship between independent variables and dependent variables. Then, the selection of optimal model was done using Chow test, Hausman test, and Lagrange multiplier LM test. Now I proceed with the third part, that is on findings and discussion. For the baseline model, which is the model without interaction terms included, the results of the panel regression using pooled OLS and random effects revealed the R-squared of 0.7 in both models, implying that 70% of the variation of food production index is explained by the explanatory variables. The estimated coefficients of agriculture land, FDI and CPI are positive and significant as expected and consistent with the findings of previous studies. The estimated coefficients of employment, labor, and fixed capital formation capital are significant but with negative sign. Intuitively, labor, force, and capital appear to be the factors that reduce the food production in the case of Southeast Asia region. The results of the random effects model are similar to the results of pooled OLS effects model. As for the fixed effects model, the R-squared of the model is far higher than the other models with a value of 0.85, which implies variation of dependent variable could be 85% explained by the model. The results of Chow and Hausman tests showed that fixed effects model is preferable than pooled OLS and random effects models. The estimated coefficients of real GDP per capita, CPI, and fixed capital formation are found to be significant in the fixed effects model, which are consistent with findings from previous studies. There is no significant correlation between agriculture land and food production index in this fixed effects model, which are consistent with the findings by Azwardi, Bashir and Yuliana, Iqbal Khan, Sohail, and Zaman. As for the model with interaction terms, the interaction terms added in the models are employment in agriculture with CO2 emission, fixed capital with CO2 emission, employment in agriculture with agriculture land, and real gross domestic product per capita with CPI. The significant and positive contribution of gross fixed capital formation to food production in the model is similar as in the baseline model. However, a negative sign is identified when the gross fixed capital formation interacts with the CO2 emission, which reflects that food production decreases from an increase in fixed capital in the presence of CO2 emission. With high emission of pollution due to economic development in the region, the contribution of capital development to food production is declining. CO2 emission positively and significantly affects food production, which is consistent with findings by Baker and Allen, where increasing atmospheric CO2 has been shown to increase the rate of photosynthesis and hence the growth of seed tree plant. Experimental studies have shown that the economic yield for most crops increases by about 33% for a doubling of ambient CO2 concentration. Now I proceed with the final part, conclusion. Due to the worsening food security situation, which calls for increasing the supply of nutritious foods and bridging productivity gaps in food production, this study has examined the relationship between food production and several key variables in the Southeast Asia region from 2006 until 2016. The method used was panel data estimation to analyze the impact of agricultural, environment, and macroeconomic determinants on food production in developing and least developed Southeast Asia countries. Based on the findings obtained, the baseline model without interaction effect revealed significant contribution of several factors on food production such as CPI, real gross domestic product per capita, and fixed capital formation. With interaction effect, fixed capital formation affects food production negatively with CO2 emission as mediating factor, and CO2 emission as an environmental factor affects food production positively and significantly. Findings therefore suggest more appropriate policies and innovative programs should be adopted in agriculture sector of the country studied to boost food production and lessen food insecurity in the region. Thank you for listening to this presentation.